Hello, everyone, and welcome to the D.I.R.T, data in real time from Lighthouse. My name is Blake Reiter. I'm the Director of Hospitality Research at Lighthouse. I have the shirt to prove it. And with me, as always, is Mr. Daniel Foreman. Daniel, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Foreman. I'm a commercial strategist here at Lighthouse. And yeah, Blake, I'm super excited to be here looking at some of this data that we've pulled. Some of this data is just only hours old. This is very, very fresh dirt.
Newborn data. Newborn.
Yeah. And this is great. So we've got some through lines from our episode a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. And we also have some brand new stuff for you, some very interesting drops and pops and all kinds of different stories that we think that you will find fascinating.
And if this is your first time tuning into the D.I.R.T, we do this every 2 weeks, and we look at how prices have moved in various global markets over the last 2 weeks. We look at certain markets, certain dates, and then Daniel and I kind of discuss why we think those prices have moved on those dates in those markets and what we think is driving those pricing movements. And then we do a deep dive into one of the markets and one of the price movements. Our goal, as always, is in about 15 minutes to make you the smartest person walking into your revenue meeting this morning. And with that, let's get into our pops and drops, starting with our pops. Quick note, everything we do is in US dollars. It's converted to USD. It just makes it easier so we can compare across markets and across geographies. And we are recording this on February 18th. And like Daniel just said, we literally just pulled this data a few hours ago. So this is the freshest of the fresh. And we will start with our pops with Kansas City. Monday, June 15th, prices are up 29%, up from $274 to $353. Now, this is the night before the Tuesday, June 16th World Cup matchup between Argentina and Algeria. We have Lionel Messi, who's obviously one of the best in the world. So, Daniel, talk to me about this. Is this just star power? What's going on here to cause this drive over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, there's some interesting points about Kansas City as it relates to the World Cup. Now, we've been putting out some content about the World Cup, and lately, the host cities that have been seeing really big jumps for the group stage have tended to be those markets that are outside of the US, so Canada and Mexico. But Kansas City is a little bit of an exception. Now, the reason for these really big price jumps, I think, has to do with the supply in Kansas City. Kansas City is the smallest hotel supply market of all of the US cities. A lot of people see this as their opportunity to go see Messi on the cheap. But now that a lot of people are starting to book for this particular game, that's quickly becoming not the case, right? You can see that hoteliers are starting to crank rate up really quickly. So that is what I think is going on here in Kansas City.
That makes sense. Let's move on to Seville, Spain. Saturday, April 18th, rates are up 34% from an already high $645 up to $865. Now, what I think is driving this is the Feria de Abril, also known as Seville April Fair. According to Welcome to Seville, this is the most important cultural festival in the city, attracting more than 1 million people every year to celebrate. It's from April 21st to April 26th officially, and this is the Saturday before that. So this is Saturday, April 18th. So what I see, hoteliers are clearly getting demand signals. They're seeing the pickup for that early arrival for people to come and then stay through the week. They're confident in where the pace is at this point to drive the already high rate a little bit higher. That's what I'm gathering here. It's just purely a pacing story here. Up next, we have Las Cruces, New Mexico, Saturday, May 26th. Now, this one, Daniel, you take a victory lap here, because this one, we talked about this 2 weeks ago when we talked about BTS, the K-pop band that is playing a show in El Paso, Texas. And we were saying how smart it is that they were doing it in El Paso because they would pull from all these surrounding cities, of which one of them was Las Cruces. You said it. So talk to us, Daniel. What's happening?
Las Cruces is close enough to where we're seeing that demand kind of radiate out away from El Paso. So I'll put up on the screen right now that visual that I showed you 2 weeks ago, just as kind of a refresher. Anywhere within a 4, 5, 6 hour drive of El Paso could potentially see some pricing benefits because of BTS, because it's such a big event. And we're already starting to see it in Las Cruces, which is really, really impressive.
Moving on to Friday, May 29th in Newport, Rhode Island. Rates are up from $369 to $550, almost 50%. This is the Friday right after Memorial Day. So Memorial Day is the Monday. This is the ensuing Friday. Obviously, they knew Memorial Day was May 25th, right? This is not a new thing that happened over the last 2 weeks. They knew this was not Friday. So I look at this, Daniel. This feels like a straight up booking pace adjustment. They saw they were getting the pace for the Friday after. Demand signals were there. They felt good about driving rate. Nothing really changed as far as I can tell. I think this is just booking pace. Do you see anything else here?
Event-wise, nothing seems to be changing, but we're seeing that pricing coming up. You see this sometimes as you get out of the winter. People basically remember, oh yeah, weather's going to be nice again. Let's book a stay in Newport. So that's what I think is going on there. It could also be that, the Memorial Day weekend before is already quite high occupancy, already pretty expensive. So some people may be shifting forward to that next weekend. So I think this is very much just hoteliers responding to demand.
And our last pop is Leeds, May 20th. Rates have more than tripled over the last 2 weeks, $213 to $700. Massive, massive spike. Now, this is what I like to call a perfect storm for a hotel revenue manager, right? Because this is what's happening, okay? You have the Leeds Football Club. Their last home game is May 17th. So a few days before this little old Wednesday, May 20th. So May 17th, last home game for the Leeds Football Club. May 22nd. Couple days later is the rugby team's home game on May 22nd. So they're playing at home on the 22nd, the 20th. The Leeds Football Club's last home game is the 17th. So this is right in the middle. But there's more. Leeds is also hosting the UK Real Estate Investment and Infrastructure Forum. That's on May 19th to May 21st. And again, this is May 20th. So right in the middle of that, 16,000 estimated attendees for that event. And on top of all that, we have Leeds Jazz Fest from May 21 to May 25. So this little Wednesday in the middle of everything. And the Leeds hoteliers are like, listen, there's things before, things after, things during. Let's triple rate and see what happens. And that's what happens over the last 14 days. Rates have more than tripled. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our pops. Now let's move over to our drops. And now, Daniel, I'm gonna kick this one over to you. We're gonna put all the drops on the screen at once because we have a bit of a through line between 3 of these 5 destinations and dates, all about skiing and ski markets. Daniel, take it away.
Like you said, Blake, 3 out of the 5 are classic winter ski markets. Those would be Zakopane in Poland, Park City, Utah, and then Interlaken in Switzerland. Now, what is going on with these 3 markets? They're in 3 completely different countries, but they're all exhibiting an extremely similar trend. Here's what we think is going on. Whenever these hoteliers were setting up their peak ski season rates, whether it was a year ago, 2 years ago, whenever they were doing that, it's very likely that they were setting up their pricing strategy in the most optimistic way possible. They're pricing as though it's going to be the best ski season ever. And then once you actually get into the ski season, and now we're starting to approach the end of ski season, unfortunately, the reality starts to set in and you can kind of see I guess it's the opposite of the light at the end of the tunnel. But now you kind of see that demand starting to taper off a little bit. And again, reality is setting in. So these hoteliers are starting to drop rate in a lot of these ski markets, especially for these very, very late ski season dates. So that's really what's going on here is the pricing optimism is kind of over. Reality is setting in. And these hoteliers are now starting to drop rate to try to boost some occupancy for these dates.
Totally makes sense. Now let's talk about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, April 23rd. Now, this is a weird one. This is a weird one because I'm a football guy, and I know that the football draft is on April 23rd, and it is in Pittsburgh, and that's the first round. That's round 1. That's the day. That's when it all is happening. And we were literally talking about this on the Dirt. I think it was last episode or maybe it was 2 episodes ago about how the struggle really is for Pittsburgh to get people to extend into the weekend. We know Thursday is taken care of. How do we get people to stay through the weekend? But here, this is the first round. Daniel, what gives?
Yeah, this one I think has a geographic element to it. Now, what's going on here, if you were to look on, say, a meta search or a booking platform that has a map feature, and you were to zoom in and look at hotel availability around the stadium where the draft is going to be held, rates are still super high, and it is still as competitive as ever for that first night of the draft on Thursday. The reason why I think we're seeing prices drop in Pittsburgh is because obviously this data set is looking at all of Pittsburgh. And if you zoom out a little bit and start to look at one night availability for that Thursday of round one, the farther flung parts of the city, especially out east, so we're talking 15, 20, 30-minute drives from where the draft is going to be held, we're starting to see some one-night availability open back up. So it's very likely that these are hoteliers that did not see that compression from the draft, and now they're left with this Thursday night shoulder night that they do need to fill some rooms. So I think hoteliers are starting to lower rate if they didn't get that compression, that strong compression from the draft that's right around downtown and right by the stadium.
Last but not least, let us go into Bilbao. Now, this is going to be our main story. So let's transition into this. Now, this is a kind of a bit of a rugby-driven movement, but it's a downward price movement, and there's a lot of interesting angles going on here. So, Daniel, why don't you kick it off here and just broadly set the stage about why this is our deep dive, what's going on here?
This is the European Rugby Champions Cup. It's useful to think of this kind of as like the UEFA Champions League, but for rugby. So these are the top clubs of what's known as the Six Nations. So France, Ireland, Italy, Scotland, England, and Wales. The best top flight clubs from those countries participate in this tournament. And the finals is what's happening here in Bilbao. Now, another cool fact is Bilbao has already hosted this exact same event back in 2018. It was a huge success. In fact, San Mamés, their stadium that hosted the event, recorded their all-time highest attendance at 52,282 guests that came out to watch this sporting event. So you know it's going to be huge. But here's some other things to consider. This is a tournament, Blake. And let me ask you a hypothetical.
Give me.
If you're a hotelier and you know you've got a huge tournament coming up and you want to guard your inventory and price rate super, super high, but you don't know who those teams are going to be in the final, what's the risk that you run by pricing your rates crazy high at $1,300?
We talk about this, Daniel, and I believe the expression that you're alluding to is don't isolate your base demand.
Exactly. That is what I think is the primary reason why we're seeing rates come down for an event that we know is going to be huge.
Huge.
Yeah, it's going to be massive. And another reason why we know it's going to be massive is from the supply side of things.
Yeah.
Bilbao is actually a relatively small supply market. We're talking something only like 5,000 rooms in the city proper. And we know we're going to have something like 52,000+ people that are going to attend this event. So what gives, right? Like, why are rates coming down? That is what I think is going on. We still just don't know who's going to be in the final. We have some ideas. The favorite right now is a club called Leinster Rugby, which is an Irish club. But again, we don't know for sure if they're going to be in the final. So it's really hard for the fans to commit and go ahead and book their room, especially if they're going to be spending in excess of $1,000.
Yeah, it's also hard for hoteliers to market to certain travelers, to certain segments, to certain people. Yeah. Obviously, they don't know who they're marketing to yet.
Exactly. And speaking of marketing, Blake, I'm glad that you brought that up because there's another factor at play here, which I thought was very interesting that we don't see as much in the US, and that is travel packages. Travel packages are a really big part of how rugby fans book their stay and book their travel whenever they're coming out to a big championship final like this. So if you were to go onto Destinations Champions Club website, you can see there's all these different packages that are being offered. The event organizers are partnering with all these different hotels in Bilbao. But in the event that these packages don't book well, it's also very possible that hoteliers are also releasing some of this inventory back to sell to the general public. So that is another angle that we maybe need to consider as to why hotel pricing might be dropping despite having really, really good event in the city. It may just be that 1,300 was a little high for people. And, testing the waters, it may have been a little bit steep.
And frankly, rates may reverse track. They may come back up at some point between now and May. And, we've talked about this in other contexts as well. We've looked at price evolutions for football for Super Bowl weekend. We've seen this before. We see sometimes prices kind of start to ascend once the season starts, and then they come down a bit until the halftime show is announced, and then they come back up again. We see different patterns. So yeah, I think what we're seeing here in Bilbao is kind of an aggregation of all these different trends that we see, and these are just common price movements. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that about does it. This has been The Dirt, data in real time. We will be back in 2 weeks, and we will be talking about the price movements that happen over the next 2 weeks. Keep tuning into that Spotlight feed because there's way more content that comes out there beyond The Dirt, but we will be back with The Dirt in 2 weeks. Otherwise, please get in touch. Go to www.mylighthouse.com. We are a total complete commercial strategy platform for hotels and the hospitality industry. If you're curious about how we can support your strategy, get in touch with us. And until then, we will see you next time. My name is Blake Reiter.
I'm Daniel Foreman.
And this has been The Dirt.